Ask for Candy, 101 ways to make your love life sweeter. You are listening in on Armed Radio. I am Candace Harper, love coach. I teach and inspire audacious intimacy to powerful people so that we can all have win-win romantic relationships. And make no mistake, if it's not fun, happy, or easy, it ain't love. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you. Welcome to the people on Facebook Live. Welcome to the people, right? The people listening in on Armed Radio on your Tuned In app, or you might be in the garden, Armed Radio Global.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for listening in, right?
I think I should be nervous.
Don't be nervous. I have a guest here. For those of you who are listening, you can hear him talking.
Wake up.
You can hear him talking. He's joining us tonight, and I'm going to tell you all about him in a second. But first, just so you know, the call-in number, if you want to talk to us, is 1-800-508-5431. So you're going to be able to comment, questions, whatever. I see some people joining in on Facebook Live. We got Eddie Brill and Joe Savino, Michael Ronan, Kareem Stokes. That's my cousin. All right,
Hello, family.
Right? Family's here.
Family's a beautiful thing.
Speaking of family, my guest, Askia, burgeoning author, sports fanatic.
Yes.
And good friend. How's everything?
Everything's great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Askia.
Like I said, burgeoning writer, writing a book, got a blog on that I write on regularly, sports fanatic, like you said. And speaking of sports, you saw the Super Bowl, right?
I watched the Super Bowl. I did. I live streamed
it was a hell of a game.
Crazy.
Can't feel bad about New England. They have plenty of hardware between the Patriots and Boston. But what about the halftime show? What do you think, Justin Timberlake?
I have to say, like,
he's getting a lot of flack on Facebook. I see right
He's getting a lot of flack on Facebook. You know, everybody says he's a sellout because of the Janet Jackson thing.
You got the Janet faction. That's
right. I have been a fan. I'm a fan of Justin. I do love Justin. So I thought he did a pretty good job. I don't think he took any major risks.
No, I mean, it was a safe performance. You follow Lady Gaga, Prince, who did the Downpour in the Rain. I know he did the thing for Prince that a lot of people are giving flack about, those Prince fans, but he hit all his marks.
Yeah.
He had all his hits. He got the fans involved. He went to the stands. I'm not mad at him.
Right.
There'll be people that have opinions one way or the other. So it is what it is. That's the society we live in.
He did a lot of his old hits. He kind of went back into the the crates, as they say.
Yeah.
I love that he has classics.
I didn't realize he had so many.
You're old when people that you remember being babies have classics.
That's what they were calling it, dad moments for a lot of his fans that are now fathers and parents, that they didn't realize he had so many hits and bring out all these hits. They remember things from high school based on those songs.
Right.
It made me feel old.
You got to give it up to him for nostalgia. Nothing risky, nothing controversial. He didn't do it like the ladies did it, but he did a good job. Yeah, I liked it.
And it was a great game.
That was an amazing.
And it's hard for me as a Giant fan, the two teams being in, but it is what it is. So,
right.
Great game. Hopefully it was a great game. Hopefully Philly's not still smoldering after that victory parade and the celebrations and the burning down. But Philadelphia, city love.
People get wild. I lived in Philadelphia for 6 months. And people in Philly get wild and celebrate even when there isn't a game going on. So the Super Bowl is just an excuse to continue being wild, because that's just
Philly was the old vet used to have a jail underneath the stadium that they take the fans to that had a little too much partying going on. Yeah. They'd have to go to the jail, and then we'd see the judge till Monday morning. So that was
was that only in Philly? Because I feel like
it may have been other places.
Boston
in Philly.
Fans would have had something like that.
Boston fans,
Boston can get pretty rowdy.
Yeah. I've been to Boston Yankee games.
Right?
Yeah, Boston the same way. But
New Yorkers get rowdy, Yankee games.
We get crazy. Yeah. But Philly is the ones that are known for it. Philly's like they're known for booing Santa. So that's Philly.
The Eagles.
Yes.
Sorry about that, Boston, but not sorry because you got a lot, like you said, a lot of
Red Sox, Patriots, and Tom Brady will talk about another 5 years. So you guys are good.
Yeah.
Not feeling bad for you.
So those of you who came for love, I promise Askia is not going to turn it into a sports show. I'm not going to let
Not this week.
She's
on to me. She's on to me.
So what we're going to do, just like for a rundown of how the show's going to go, for those of you who are tuning in, we're going to talk a little bit about romantic attachment. This whole theory that these people came up with about how different adults attach to each other in romantic relationships. And I'm going to read through all the different types. And you and I both took the quiz already, right?
Yes.
We'll put up links so other people can take the quiz if they want to. But we're going to read through all the different types so that people will be able to identify what kind of adult attachment they're into, how they find themselves attached to other people. Okay. And if you have problems in your relationship or you're trying to figure out relationship stuff, it's a really good way to sort of identify, what your issues might be, what your attachment style might be. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the whole theory, and I, of course, have my own thoughts on like the background of it. But once we get into it, we'll get to talk about that, and hopefully you'll share a little bit about your own too. And as always, I'm going to give my 3 ways to make our love life sweeter. So we'll talk about that and how we can, we'll talk about what the 3 ways are. And I would say the way I would do it as a woman, and you can say how you would do it as a man. And whoever wants to chime in live on Facebook, and whoever wants to call in and say how they, make their love life sweeter or what works for them, they can do that. 1-800-508-5431. And, and then they'll say good night. After that, yeah. I mean, we might interject some different things. We'll see how the night goes. We'll see how the people live go. I see Rory just joined, and Dave. What's up, Rory and Dave? I'm glad you're here. And Sauda is here. Yay! I'm excited. I feel like, what was that show where the woman would like identify everybody through the fake mirror, where she saw everybody?
Oh yeah.
It was the Romper Room.
Yeah.
Was it Romper Room?
Was that?
Who remembers? If you're on live and you can say,
I think it's Joyous Fun School. I'm never really dating myself.
We're having technical difficulties.
Anyway, we go.
So yeah, we're going to talk about the 4 different types of attachment. And if you identify your type of romantic attachment, it might be a good way to sort of understand why your relationships are what they are. If you have a great relationship, then great. You don't have to worry about it. If you have a not so great relationship, sometimes it's good to have a little bit of a better understanding of how you attach or what your attachments might be. For those of you who are on Facebook Live and trying to rejoin us, hopefully you'll be able to come back in. We had like a nice little crowd going, right?
We did, yeah.
I feel like I probably should have kept them.
And just for the record, I'm going to defer to the love coach for a lot of this. I will throw my 2 cents in for sure.
Yeah.
Especially if she says something I don't agree with. But deferring to the love coach on the love subjects.
Yes, on the romantic attachment.
Yes.
If we were talking about the Super Bowl, that would
I'm your guy.
You would be the
That's
guy.
why I'm here.
All right, cool. And so then the other thing we're going to do is talk about the 3 ways to make love life sweeter after we finish these interesting attachments. Now, here's the thing too. Another way, I'm going to read all the different types of romantic attachment, but I'll also be sending you guys a link or posting a link that you guys can actually take the quiz and find out what type of romantic attachment is yours. So, whatever. We both took the quiz.
Yeah.
Did you agree with your results?
For the most part, yeah, I really did. Yeah, for the most part, I felt it was on point. There was 1 or 2, but you're never gonna agree with everything 100%. But for the most part, I think they had me pegged.
Yeah. I hear that.
I think so.
All right, so I'm gonna read through the different ones. So it's Cindy Hazan and Philip Shaver. They have this theory that adults attach to each other in 4 different ways. And there's just 4, as according to their theory. We don't, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like people have their theories, they do whatever. How much you want to believe the psychology or the science, or how much you want to buy into it, that's totally up to you.
Hey,
but
wake up.
Let's start with the first one. It's secure. And we all want to be secure, right? Securely attached people tend to agree with the following statements. It is relatively easy for me to become emotionally close to others. I am comfortable depending on others and having others depend on me. I don't worry about being alone or others not accepting me. And this style of attachment usually results from a history of warm and responsive interactions with their attachments, which I think they mean like warm and responsive interactions with the people in their lives.
Right. First off, from the parents.
Exactly. Like started with their parents and,
they were coddled.
Right. And I think that that's a very ideal way to, because all of us have a little bit of dysfunction, a little bit of.
It seems like if there's a choice, this would be the one that most people would go for.
Right.
I'm secure.
Yeah. So often they report greater satisfaction and adjustment in their relationships than people with other attachment styles. Securely attached people feel comfortable with both intimacy and with independence. Right. which I like that. I think that, it's all about having that balance between, I'm good with being close, but I got to be able to, we go to a party, I got to be able to socialize and be on my own. And
I want you to be in love with me, but have your friends.
Exactly.
Have your own people. Like, that's a secure relationship.
Like, have your interests.
Yeah.
Be able to do what you want to do, hang with your friends. And
Don't
stuff.
be up all under me 24/7. That's an aside.
Secure attachment and adaptive functioning are promoted by a caregiver who is emotionally available and appropriately responsive to his or her child's attachment behavior. So they're saying, like, you go back to your parental relationship. Right. And so,
I can see that being the case.
Huh?
I can see that being the case. Yeah,
do you feel like you're an emotionally available father? Like when your kids need you, you're like,
I believe so.
I'm ready to talk.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, what's it saying? If you don't teach them, their friends will. Yeah. So I'd rather have them come to me and, all the craziness and whatever they have to say than go learn on the street, because they can just learn all sorts of crazy stuff.
Right. And you never know what somebody's going to tell them out there.
Yeah.
I remember there was a girl in 8th grade who told me that you could get pregnant through kissing because the sperm can come up.
Yeah.
I mean, by 8th grade.
There have been cases of that. No, but exactly. That's my point. These are the kind of things that your kids will learn and believe is true. And, if you don't tell them so. Like, my daughter was telling me about all her intimate stuff. I had to really gut check and hold it in my face and make sure that I was just emotionally available. Like, okay, and hold it in so she'll feel free to tell me these things. So I won't be, just turned off by my reaction. So yeah.
But like, what were you suppressing? Like, what were you feeling inside? Were you like, just no, no?
No, not already. Yeah.
It's too soon.
But it's what happens. It's part of being a parent. So
So they're saying that, when you come up with a parent that is emotionally available and they're saying appropriately responsive to his or her child's attachment behavior,
right,
as well as capable of regulating both his or her positive and negative emotions, which I think that means capable of regulating their own positive and negative emotions.
Yeah, that's what I get.
You know what I mean? Because I'm a big believer, and I'm not a parent, so I don't judge parents, I don't shame parents or whatever, but I really do believe that kids do what parents do, not what they say do.
Oh, absolutely. And they're watching you all the time and listen to you all the time, whether you realize it or not. Like my 11-year-old, she'll say something to me, and I realize she listened to a conversation I had months ago. Yeah. Like, they're always listening. The kids, no matter where they are, they're in the other room, they're listening.
Yeah. Hey, Tammy. Tammy just joined us on Facebook Live. What's up, Tammy?
Tammy, what's up?
We have Hyam, Rory's back. Thank you, Rory, for coming back. Robert, Joe Artizone, who's amazingly talented, amazing singer. I'm glad you're here. I wish you could come in and sing the song for our finale. All right. So the next, what's funny is that the next 3 styles of adult romantic attachment are all under the header of insecure, meaning there's only one way to be secure, right? And then there's like 3 different ways to be insecure in your relationship attachment. According to this theory. So one of them is the anxious, preoccupied attachment. So, see if you identify yourself anywhere in here. People with anxious, preoccupied attachment type tend to agree with the following statements. I want to be completely emotionally intimate with others, but I often find that others are reluctant to get as close as I would like. And I am uncomfortable being without close relationships, but I sometimes worry that others don't value me as much as I value them. So people with this style of attachment seek high levels of intimacy, approval, and responsiveness from their attachment figure.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right?
Yeah, being with someone that's anxious and that's just too needy and but everyone goes through these phases though.
Yeah.
If you're always like this, then I would say that's a problem. But
like, we all have our moments.
We all have our moments. If we're being honest, I would say we all have our moments. But you just don't want to be like that all the time, obviously.
I think that this type of attachment shows up with like people who who are like fast text responders and want to be, they want responses right away.
Yeah, before you even finish your text, they're texting you back. It's like, whoa, I haven't even finished.
Right? Or like, they'll text you and let's say you don't get it right away. And then they're like, why didn't you answer my text? What's going on? And then they write a story in their head, like, and then they're talking to their friends.
They're listening to the voices in their heads, and the voices are always saying bad things. It's always negative.
It's always negative. Yeah.
They're already giving you scenarios like why you didn't answer them. Like, no, I was asleep.
Right. Exactly. Or I was, working or something like that. Like, I think that when people have anxious or preoccupied attachment, it's like they can't they can't breathe and just let there be space
Right.
because they're too busy writing a story of
Right.
like, I'm losing this person, I'm
Right.
losing this person all the time. And so it says,
they're already setting themselves up for the bad news.
right? So further, it says they sometimes value intimacy to such an extent that they become overly dependent on the attachment figure, whoever they're in the relationship with.
Right.
Compared to securely attached people, people who are anxious or preoccupied with attachment tend to have less positive views about themselves. Of
Right.
course,
Yeah.
because you're like hoping that other person is going to fill you up or,
Right.
be complete you.
Yeah.
Like in that horrible movie. It's like that. It's that. Actually, it wasn't a horrible movie. It just was a bad message. That movie.
Yeah.
Was it Jerry Maguire? He's like, you complete me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you can't.
You had me at hello.
Right.
There's good lines in that movie.
Well, you had me at hello. I think it's possible. You can have somebody at hello. It's like, damn, I definitely want to get with that person. But to think that someone completes who you are as a person is just such a dysfunctional. It's weak. It's it's not good. Hey, Pascal and Ivan joined in. That's the Facebook Live for those of you who are listening on the radio. You can also join on Facebook Live. If you want to come in, you can either become my friend or you can join the Creative Love Collective, which is my group on Facebook, and you'll be able to see this live. And
sounds like you should have CDs of songs, the Creative Love Collective.
The Creative Love
like
Collective.
That. Yeah. It sounds like a nice soundtrack.
Right? It's a collection of intimate music for those special nights.
You got some Isley Brothers, some Sade.
Right? Little poetry.
Yeah, nice.
So, anxious, preoccupied, compared to securely attached people who are anxious or preoccupied with attachment tend to have less possible views about themselves. I think we did that part. They may feel a sense of anxiousness that only recedes when in contact with the attachment figure. They often doubt their worth as a person and blame themselves for the attachment figure's lack of responsiveness. Like, I'm not.
That sounds like you come home and if you don't answer the text, you can find them in your bathtub with their wrists slit. That sounds all sorts of
desperate.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Fatal attraction.
Right?
Yeah.
It says people who
I see Glenn Close being this part.
Do you?
Fatal attraction.
Yeah. People who are anxious or preoccupied with attachment may exhibit high levels of emotional expressiveness, emotional dysregulation, which I'm not even sure what that is. Emotional I guess not regulating your own emotions is what I'm, assuming.
Like
worry and
based on your partner.
Right? And impulsiveness in their relationship. So people who are
like
just
cooking your daughter's a rabbit.
Yes, that's pretty impulsive.
That's impulsive.
To cook somebody's rabbit.
That's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, but I think that when you're in a relationship with someone who's anxious, preoccupied, it's like, and you're not that sort of attachment.
Yeah.
It gets very uncomfortable because it's very demanding. It's very needy, right? Like you were saying.
Yeah, I think I've been there before. I've seen
there's a code, and I have to say, like, if I'm honest, I know that there were times I have a line to be drawn, like I have boundaries with it, but there's definitely been situations where I chose somebody who probably wasn't good for me in the first place, and so my anxiety just came from knowing that person wasn't that good for me anyway, but thinking I could somehow control it
or change him
him or make it happen, or and then so when you think that you can control or change something and they don't call you back, it's like, oh, maybe it's not working. Like your subconscious.
Yeah. Like that's why I said the voices start talking to you.
The voices
and then you make up
talking.
these scenarios. It's like, I'm at work.
Yeah.
I work 8 hours, so sorry I couldn't get back to you and your 48 texts.
Right. So here's another.
No, we're not making fun of these people.
No, not at all. This is all about identification.
Right.
Because it's, when we get aware of something that we're doing, especially when we're living in a problem, whether it be a relationship problem or whatever, it's all about awareness and recognition.
Yeah.
And if you guys remember, if you were listening last week, the question was, how do you show up? So this sort of is a segue into understanding how we show up and not making ourselves wrong for it.
Right.
Because like we said in the beginning, all of this stuff comes from what our relationships with our parents were like, right?
Yeah. Everything comes from your relationship with money comes from where your relationship, your parents' relationship with money, what they showed you about money.
Totally.
So all this goes back to childhood. Everything in life somehow goes back to childhood.
Right?
Quote Sigmund Freud.
Those formative years when we get all screwed up.
Yeah.
And then we spend the rest of our adulthood
hating our parents.
or unscrewing ourselves.
Or unscrewing ourselves from, they did to us. Yeah.
Okay, so another form of attachment is the dismissive avoidant. And this is obviously also under the insecure category. People with a dismissive style of avoidant attachment tend to agree with these following statements. I am comfortable without close emotional relationships. It is important to me to feel independent and self-sufficient, and I prefer not to depend on others or have others depend on me. People with this attachment style desire a high level of independence. Like they just do not want to be bothered
Right.
at all.
That sounds like a defense mechanism too, doesn't it?
Totally.
Like, you know, I don't want to be hurt, so I'm gonna avoid the hurt by being detached.
Yeah.
You know.
Like isolate myself.
Yeah.
And have nothing.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I think there's a weird, because I mean, I'm a big believer. I'm a love coach, so obviously I believe in love. I believe that connection is what, it's like food. It sustains us. Like I think
Barry White on that too, by the way.
Barry White on the Creative Love Collective.
When you said love coaches, that's old Barry White.
It's
Old Barry White.
Right?
Yeah.
But love does sustain us. I like our human connections. They do sort of sustain us in a way. However, you know, obviously there are people, you know, if we don't think in terms of like sociopaths and people who just, you know, are clinical as far as their mental illness. But obviously there are people who are highly independent. I mean, I know that I can go through bouts of like being cool with being alone. I don't, you know, I don't need anybody around me for a little while. But I think you're right. Like if it's an ongoing thing where you're dismissing, avoiding, and you don't want to be bothered with people, that there's something to be said for, you know, looking at that attachment. And if it's a problem for you, like if you have hermited yourself away and you're perfectly happy, then do you.
Or maybe you've been hurt.
Yeah.
Maybe you've been hurt in the past and you don't want to go through that, obviously, that bad space in your life. So you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
No, totally. So it says the desire for independence often appears as an attempt to avoid attachment altogether. They view themselves as self-sufficient and invulnerable to feelings.
I don't need no man.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what? That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I've seen them.
Yeah. I mean, I know that men do that too, but a lot of times it's like, you know, women, we sort of get a bad rap sometimes, but I think there's a lot of single women that I work with where it's like, I don't need a man.
Yeah.
You know, I make my own money, whatever.
I've seen that. Yeah.
I got a cat. I got a dog, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't, you know.
They have the 9 cats. You know?
9 cats.
No, but yeah. I definitely, I've seen that as well. So yeah.
So, you know, if you're falling in that category, if you're, you know, in a space of like, I'm okay with being alone. I don't need nobody. I don't need no man.
But there are some people that genuinely feel that way, and that's how they live. They feel like they're super dependent, and they really don't, and that's how they live their lives. And they may not be fronting, but there are other people that just like, you know, they've been hurt, so this is a defense mechanism. So I don't act like this, you know, until I'm in another relationship and then get hurt again.
Without any science, what would you guess is the percentage of people who like legit just don't want to be bothered with anybody else? Just 30, like your
30,
guess.
70.
Just like 30. You think it's that much?
That are legit with it?
Like legitimately don't want to be bothered with other people. Like the dismissive, avoidant thing where they're like, I don't need relationships.
I'd stick with that 30, 70.
You think it's 30, 70?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think so. There's some people out there that really feel that way.
I would guess like 95, 5.
Wow.
I think only like 5% of people. I think most people who say that, and like you were talking about, they're like, you know, they were hurt or.
Maybe I'm just giving these people the benefit of the doubt.
I think you might. Well, I don't know. I mean, who knows? I believe in human connection, and I believe, you know, like I said, it sustains us. So I don't think that much of the population it truly feels like they don't need somebody. But I do think that a big percentage of the population tells themselves that.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult to connect.
You may be right, love coach.
Who knows? Who knows? There's no science behind that. I just, you know, I'm going on what I know. We're going on what we know. And those of you who are on Facebook Live, whoever, let's see, Jeff George, Amy, Gallus, Julie, Beth, Peggy.
Jeff George was the name of a great quarterback back in the day. But, but I digress. This isn't a sports show.
This is not a sports show.
He had a hell of an arm.
Those of you who have joined in, please feel free to chime in on this conversation. And if you want to chime in or call in on the conversation or ask a question, or if you have an opinion you want to share, we love opinions. The number is 1-800-508-5431. So feel free to call in. And what else? does it say about people with a dismissive avoidant attachment style tend to suppress and hide their feelings too. See, that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. And they tend to deal with rejection by distancing themselves from the sources of rejection.
Yeah, they don't want to get hurt again.
Their attachments. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Beth. Beth just joined. And so then our very last attachment style is fearful avoidant. So people who avoid out of fear. I totally have fallen in this category many times in my life without even reading it yet.
You?
Huh?
You?
Oh, yeah.
I don't see that.
Like, get scared and be like, oh, no. All right. So this is what it says about fearful avoidant. People with losses or other trauma, such as sexual abuse, and not even with the sexual abuse, but just like, my own reasons,
right,
such as sexual abuse in childhood and adolescence, may often develop this type of attachment and tend to agree with the following statements. I am somewhat uncomfortable getting close to others. I want emotionally close relationships, but I find it difficult to trust others completely or to depend on them. I sometimes worry that I will be hurt if I allow myself to become too close to others. And people with this attachment style have mixed feelings about close relationships. On the one hand, they desire to have emotionally close relationships. And on the other hand, they tend to feel uncomfortable with emotional closeness.
This is understandable though. Now, someone goes through something like a trauma, like you hear about all these young ladies going through it at in Michigan with that Dr. Nasser that's just been sentenced for like 200 years. He'll never get out of jail. He'll die in jail. But something like that, experience like that, you can understand them having a fearful, avoidant feeling about relationships. Absolutely. Because they just they went through some trauma and they'll have a hard time. This is a doctor, someone they should have trusted. So they'll have a hard time trusting other people in relationships. That's understandable. Totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, what about people who didn't necessarily have a trauma and just have here's the thing. I guess on some level, there's always some sort of something that teaches you that there's hurt and pain having to do with love or depending on people.
Yeah.
I know for myself, it's like there's something I can't necessarily pinpoint it right now, but there's something that says just take care of it yourself. Yeah. Okay, don't depend on, but I'm aware of it. I feel like, awareness is half the battle. Right. But I would have to say that most of my adult life, it's been don't rely on somebody else to get it done because they might not do it or they might not do it right or whatever.
Yeah, I get that message too. But you really understand it more if something like traumatic, like in this case happens, some kind of abuse happens in the past. But it's love is jumping into the ocean. Not knowing what's going to happen. So I can understand being fearful, especially if you've been burnt in the past. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. So the rest of this, they commonly view themselves as unworthy of responsiveness from their attachments, and they don't trust the intentions of their attachments. Similar to the dismissive avoidant attachment style, people with a fearful avoidant attachment style seek less intimacy from attachments and frequently suppress and deny their feelings. Because of this, they are much less comfortable expressing affection. So if you identify yourself in this, don't make yourself wrong. Whether you're any of these last three, if you're in the secure zone, stay there.
If possible.
If you can. But that's the thing too, and we were talking
it's
about
cyclical. You could be insecure. Like I took the test, you could be insecure. But then you also have periods where you're fearful avoidance, you have dismissive. You go back and forth.
Right.
And no one just stays in one part of the pendulum the whole, 80, 90 years you're here. So depends on where you are at the time.
I totally agree with that. It depends on where you are at the time and also what your relationship is to yourself at the time.
Right.
Different things can go on in your life where you feel better.
You can be more self-aware. You get more self-aware about yourself.
Yeah.
And then that, relationship with yourself obviously has tremendous amount to do with your relationship with other people. So you learn more about yourself. You're able to deal with things within yourself, things that happened in the past, and reconcile things, and maybe you'll be able to do better in a relationship.
Yeah. It's all about awareness, people. The thing is that the worst thing to do is to be in a space of shame, whatever behaviors that come out of when we're going through these different cycles, I think. And what is good about this theory that they put together is that it does sort of put it in an analytical box so we can kind of recognize behavior, which I think there's nothing wrong with that. Right. I think it's very important to be aware that you don't start identifying yourself this way. Let's say you like you saw in Anxious Preoccupied, some of those behaviors might be your behaviors. Maybe you're someone who calls someone with desperation, but to walk around and identify yourself as someone who is anxious and preoccupied and desperate, and that's just who you are, and claim it as an
write
identity.
it off and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, like the purpose of this is not to make yourself wrong, but also not to burden yourself. You can be whoever you want to be at any given moment, but you can't change something until you know that it exists, right?
Like Oprah said, you what she say? You know better, you do better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was Maya Angelou?
It was Oprah quoting Maya Angelou.
Was it?
Let's call it that.
We'll call it that. Oprah quoting Maya Angelou. But yeah, you know better, you do better. Or when you know better and you've hit rock bottom and you can't think of anything else to possibly do because everything sucks.
Yeah.
You then do
there's
better. There's
that too.
Right?
Nowhere else to go.
Yeah. So if you want to, I will put a link to this quiz. So anybody who wants to take the quiz and kind of figure out what category they fall in, they can definitely do that. I'll put a link on the Facebook Live post, and I will also post it in the Armed Radio group and, wherever else people might. If you want, you can reach out to me too. You can reach out to me on Facebook if you want this link. So find out where you sit.
It's actually pretty. It's a quick quiz. It's kind of informative. It's
Did you feel like it was informative?
It was.
Do you want to share anything you learned about yourself?
No.
No.
Thanks for asking. No, but in this one in particular, I mean, just the one I took, it says that I'm in secure region of the space. Yeah. But it also mentions some other things that they are comfortable expressing their emotions. They tend to not suffer from depression. Other things I didn't wholeheartedly agree with, but I can see as a whole agreeing with it. But the other little things on the sides, I'm not sure. But you never agree with anything wholeheartedly anyway, 100%. But
that's true.
But I'm talking about as far as the questions they ask. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they ask a lot of different questions in the same way, but you end up thinking about them in a different way.
Yeah,
It's interesting the way they pose them. So I think it's helpful to take.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
All right, I hear that. See, I didn't mind my results because I will say that, like we were talking about before, it is cyclical, and I can remember times where I was in different areas.
Right.
Like the way they sort of give you it's like you get when you take the quiz. I don't know if you guys can see this. It's like on a graph. For those of you on Facebook Live, you can see it. Those of you who are on the radio, it's on like a graph. So you can fall anywhere on that graph, and you kind of want to fall into the secure zone, I guess. If you're feeling good about things, and you probably will, but if things aren't feeling so good,
and if you're being honest with the answers.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no sense cheating yourself with these kind of quizzes, right?
Right, exactly. Like it's for your own awareness and your own whatever transformation, however you want to do that. So yeah, that's that with attachment styles. What do you think about that?
I think it's great. Like I said, I can see me taking this like a year ago and having different results.
Yeah.
But right now, I definitely agree with it is now for the most part, like I said.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yay, attachment styles. Now, anybody out there, if you want to, write to me, ask any questions, you want to call in, feel free to call in. If you're on Facebook Live and you have any comments about attachment styles or, if anything came up for you, anything that you're feeling, feel free to do that. And if you want to comment later on the Facebook Live, or if you want to post later on, just do #AskForCandy, and I will always respond, and we can always have a conversation about it. Like I said last week, this is a conversation, so don't chime in, and don't feel like because I'm a big believer. I always say I'm the coach on the court. There's nobody who has mastered this love thing and just knows all your answers. That's why I don't like a lot of the gurus who give tips and tricks and things like that, because there's no one size fits all way of doing your love life, of being happy, of having a good relationship with yourself. It's about being involved in the conversation, right? It's about what works for you individually, and getting the support to be able to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Support is important.
Support is important. So what is going to be our regular tradition is that I always give 3 ways to make mine too, love and life sweeter.
Okay.
Because we're here to ask for candy.
Nice plug, like segue. Love it.
Right? Yeah. So the first one, there's three for this week. The first one is learn listening. Now, we always, when people are raising their children, they always say, oh, they don't listen. I have to teach them how to listen. They have to learn how to listen. But I think what we learn as children is how to do what our parents say, which is not necessarily listening, and the understanding that listening is a skill.
Listening is also an action.
Yes.
As opposed to hearing.
Yes.
You can hear, like you always say, do you hear me? But no, are you listening to me? That means, are you going to do what are you going to is there action involved afterwards? There's a lot of people, like, even in conversations, like, I've done this. My daughter knows I'm crazy, but like when I'm talking to people, a lot of times people only are hearing you so they can respond. Yeah. So a lot of times they're not even hearing you. Like, I'll just say some gibberish stuff. And I'm like, I was talking to someone, say, oh yeah, my pants were down, blah, blah, and I would do it in front of my kids. She's like, oh, and that shows just people aren't listening. Yeah. And she laughs, but it's true. People are not, they're hearing you but not listening. It involves action. So I don't want to preach on that, but it's really true. So I talk about it often.
I always call that waiting to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, you were just getting their points together, like yeah. Like when people say, have a person ask you how your weekend was, and you start talking all this crazy stuff. They're like, good. They didn't hear anything you said.
Yeah. I painted myself purple, and I jumped into the Hudson. I swam across to Jersey and ate a crab.
Yeah, it's like, oh, good. Well, that's great. Yeah, I went to Jersey. I went to this. They'll just talk about what they did.
Yeah,
they didn't hear anything you said.
Yeah,
it's
that's
crazy.
True. And so, I mean, here's a secret too. If you want to connect with anyone, actually, if you want someone to fall in love with you, learn active listening, because so few people do it. It makes us rare and special and treasured when we're just willing to hear each other, listen, and respond to what we're hearing, rather than
waiting to talk and say what we have to say.
Exactly.
I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
I sometimes I have to really just stay in the moment and be able to listen to what someone's saying, because like I found myself guilty of having my response ready. Yeah.
No, I do it too, but it's definitely one way to make things a little sweeter.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right.
It just feels so good when you know someone's listening to you.
Yeah.
And that and you can tell.
Yeah.
It's not fake. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, it's true.
It's true.
Also, too, it's like, and this is, you don't want to be manipulative with this, but the reason I think that's true is because when someone is actually listening to you, it's like, as humans, we naturally mirror each other's tone and behavior.
Right.
So when someone speaks to you, especially if someone speaks to you in a sweet way, and you're actually listening, you're going to naturally respond to the sweetness. Right. And so that's what connection is. Like, being able to just naturally, authentically respond to the energy that someone's giving you, whether it's in their tone or the words that they're saying, being able to do that rather than, I'm thinking about something else, I'm hooked up on something else, my mind is going elsewhere while you're talking. So then when I respond to you, it's the energy is different. So then we're missing each other. It's like a misconnection. Yeah. So it's almost like a little bit of an instant relationship fix.
Love connection.
It's an instant love connection. It's an instant way to have people just like, oh, I kind of love you now.
Yeah.
Right?
It's such a rare thing.
Totally. Like diamonds aren't that rare. Whatever. That's a whole nother. All right. So number 2, start a project with someone. So the best way to learn if someone is relationship or even friend worthy is to collaborate with them on something that has nothing to do with dating or romance. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, except if you actually put something together, because I'm not handy. That could be a bad project. I could be like, you know what, this guy isn't the one.
Yeah. Not necessarily, because I think what happens with stuff like that, especially when you're out of your comfort zone, when we're out of our comfort zone, like who we really are shows up.
Absolutely. You'd be frustrated, be cursing,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And for somebody who's like, I can't deal with somebody who's frustrated and cursing and all of that
comes
stuff,
out. Yeah.
They get to see all
and
of that.
There's the real person.
Yeah.
There's the real person. Absolutely.
And then on the other hand, like actually successfully planning and doing something together and having it work out is like, it's a beautiful thing.
That works too.
It's very romantic.
Even if like one leg is off of the dresser and it's wobbly, you can't have anything on top of your dresser because it's like, but he was there. He did it with me.
He was there, and we did it. We built it together.
That's right.
Right?
That's what counts.
It falls apart every 3 weeks, but we built it together. So yeah, that's another way to just make love and life sweeter. And then the third way is to find the ease.
Explain.
What do you think? You want me to explain that
Please.
one a little bit more? So, there's this thing, and, I was on a show a couple months ago with someone else's show, and we were talking about love and what it takes to be in a relationship. And, there's this thing, and it's reinforced in our culture constantly with music and everything, that love hurts. Like there's even a song, Love Hurts, that love is supposed to be like this upward climb or the struggle. And, if you're not getting through it with somebody, then it's not real love. But I actually, and this is my own theory, my own thinking, I think that it's the belief that love is supposed to be difficult that takes us out of love.
I can see that.
Because if it's difficult,
Right.
it's not love. It's really not. And, you know, people, especially people who've been married for a long time, and this is not to shame or judge anybody who's been married for a long time, who's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. We've been married 25 years. You try it and see if you still love that person.
Right.
I'm not saying that there's never conflict. I'm not saying that you never disagree with each other, but I think, you know, the expression and the action of love is in the time that we've been together. How do we find the ease with each other rather than look for the conflict, rather than focus on, you know, what could possibly go wrong and focus on the drama. So the making it sweeter is like, how can I have this be easier?
Okay. Understood. Yeah. Well, there's
What do you
more.
think?
Just like in any relationship, you have there's more. It's sweeter to look at what you have in common than your differences. So, you know, and love, and it's gonna be work. All relationships are work. It's part of it.
See, that's the belief though.
But
all relationships are work.
But it is. It's the truth. Like anyone that's listening that's been in a relationship for 25 years, like you said, well, no, it is work, but it's not necessarily bad work. It's like picking your battles. Like you're not gonna fight over every little thing as a guy. You're not gonna fight over every little thing. You gotta pick your battles.
Yeah.
Love, you know, it makes it so much more sweeter that way than to fight over every little thing. You know, this
tell
can be
me
avoided.
tell me this.
Tell me this.
Because
Riddle me this.
Riddle me this. Because I feel like you're saying what probably 99% of people say, that love is work. Relationships are work, right?
They are.
And I agree with that. But tell me, like when you say that, like what is it that you're specifically pointing at when you say, like, what is the work part of it?
Well, just keeping things new, keeping things fresh. You know, you have to work at, you know, you have to want to do the work to keep things fresh. And I'm not trying to talk like it's a relationship expert, but I'm just talking about
but no, I mean, we're all
from what I know,
yeah.
from what I've lived. You have to work to keep things fresh. You're with this person, you know, things get still stale after all if you're with the person for a long time. But what did you do in the beginning to keep it fresh? You know, did you date each other? You know, a lot of people don't date each other anymore. You know, you get into the relationship, was like, you know, now I'm come home and put on sweatpants. No, you weren't doing that in the beginning. You know, I wasn't coming home when you were wearing the chastity belts and your sweatpants in the beginning. But you know, just keep things fresh. Keep things. You know, you have to be willing to just think out of the box, and which is fun.
Yeah,
you know, that's fun work.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily bad work. Yeah, that's fun.
I mean, I would imagine, and maybe I'm too much of an idealist about it, is that like that idea of keeping it fresh and like approaching it with newness every single time you get a chance to connect with each other would just be fun. It would be easy. Like, you know, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, because I feel like that's what a lot of people say. I don't, you know, I don't discount that, but it's like, you know, where does there have to be anything but ease? Like, you know, I wore a thong last week, and then this week I'm going to wear high heels. You know what I mean? Like, you know, no, but what I'm saying, or even for the guy, it's like, you know, I brought you flowers last week, and then this week I'm going to bring chocolate, whatever it is. Like,
think out of the box. Just do things that are cool and fun. You know, that's, I think we're saying the same thing, but you're working to keep it fresh. That's what I mean by work. Yeah. Which is fun, which could be very fun.
I agree with that. But even
creative too. Could be creative.
Right? Like you get an opportunity to be. I always love opportunities to be creative. You know? But it also depends on who you're in a relationship with. Now, I feel like when you get to a point where, and this is not to say that because if your relationship feels like it's hard work or it feels like it's difficult, that you need to get out. But I also think that that's an indication. You know, like I've been in a relationship where I didn't want to do those things, and all of those things did feel like work, and it felt like a hassle because there was a lot of other beliefs and things going on in my head that had me not wanting to sort of give over to that, to submit to that. You know, and that's where it feels like work. That's why I don't want to do it. That's love.
If you don't want to do it, it's work.
Exactly. You're exact. That's it.
And if it's forced, it's work.
Yeah.
You know, that means that there may be some other things going on.
And that's not love. Like you might love that person,
right?
But I feel like when we're in a space of like, I don't, this is too much. That's not generating love. So, you know, I guess what I'm saying
is it feels forced. I think the other person will feel it too. It feels fake. Yeah. You can tell when someone's doing something just because you wanted them to do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just from my heart, and this is why, you know, I want to do this for you. You can tell it's not. And I'd rather not you do it if it's forced.
Yeah.
I feel that way. It's just like, yeah.
But you know how I think, you know, a lot of people who've been in relationships for years, and I think both men and women can get into this space of like why don't you do this anymore? Or can you do this for me? Or will you do this for me? You know, I think that's the thing. It's like when I've been in a relationship with somebody for 20 years or whatever, and I want them to amp it up, it's like, you know, I don't want you to fake it, but, you know, and you don't want to do it, but how do I get you to do it? What do I do? You know, and I think that's when it's work in that sense, that's when you have to look at, like, who are you expressing love with that person, or are you needing for them to feel something for you? Does that make sense? Or is that person, you know, expressing love to you? But that's the thing. We always in relationships look for how the other person is expressing love for us, rather than like, how do I just generate? Like, the ease comes with, let me just generate love. Let me just generate it. However I have to do that, like however it needs to come up. And maybe I want this person to do something. I need something from this person. And I'm not saying to pretend, you know, and be sweet to them to try to manipulate them into things. But it's like, how do I get into their space and understand them in a way that they feel compelled to engage in the relationship? Yeah. And if they don't, then obviously we got to look at, should we be in this relationship?
Then on to plan B.
On to plan B.
As in be going.
Right? You know, and I think depending on how long you've been together, we make light of it. Like, there's people who've been together 30, 35 years that are like, how do I do plan B? But, you know, I really do believe it's, you have to be able to find the ease. And that can be very complicated for different people, especially if you've been together for a long time. But love is not supposed to be hard.
I like that. Find the ease. Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. Sweet. So I think we did great. How do you feel?
I feel good. Were we up? Are we done?
Well, we're not done just yet. We still got a little bit more.
I like it.
But, you know, we're doing a little check-in, see how we're feeling. Everybody out on Armed Radio, on Global, what is it? On the Garden, Armed Radio Global, and on their TuneIn apps listening in. The number is 1-800-508-5431 if you want to get in some, you know, last-minute comments or questions.
Let's
join in. Everybody on Facebook. I see Reynard came in, people who joined in on Facebook Live. And also, if you want to comment later or have any questions later, just you can do it on Facebook Live, #AskForCandy.
If you want the test.
If you want to take the test, I will. I'm going to post the link. I have to find it and copy it again, but I'm going to post the link on Facebook Live. I also put it up on the Armed Radio group site for anybody who wants to take the attachment test to find out where they are on the graph. I actually was pretty happy with my placement. I'm in the secure placement on the graph. It took me
I didn't know about your results. I want to hear them.
You want to hear? Well, I'm not fully sharing all my results, but I'm in the secure area, which is good. Okay. I mean, I definitely used to be in the fearful avoidant area. Okay. I'm sure, you know, a couple past people to talk about that.
I'm sure. We all have those couple past
right?
people. Right?
We all have those couple past people. And so what we're going to do for this week, I always want to leave you with a question to sort of ponder and to think about. And we can talk about this a little bit, and maybe you'll share yours. Okay. I'll share mine. So the question for this week is going to be, what would you let go of that would leave room for something better? Right?
Yeah, I mean, think about that.
So I think of it in terms of like, you know, when you clean out a closet, or, you know, people who like to hang on to things for a long time. It's like there's a certain idea that I'm holding on to what I have. I'm afraid to let go of it because I'm not going to get something new. So I think the same applies to relationships, like whether it's a behavior or it's a, you know, a habit, like you were talking about before, the work of keeping it fresh. Like if it's a habit, an old habit that's still in place, that's like, you know, kind of keeping the relationship stagnant, whatever. Like, what could you let go of that would leave room for something better? Sometimes it's people.
Sometimes, a lot of times it is people. A lot of times, you know, you have what they call them, vampires. Like people that, but a lot of times people mean well.
Yeah.
Like people will give you advice, but they're sharing their fear a lot.
Yeah.
You know, they're sharing things that you can't do it because, and they're just sharing things, you know, the negatives that they've gone through or that they think would happen to you. They're doing it out of love.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you can't fault them, but at the same time, it's just negative and not to your purpose.
Like people are talking to themselves a lot of times.
Right. It is. It's like almost cathartic for them to hear their fears being spoken through their own mouths. But yeah, it's like I said, it's out of love, but yeah, it's not for your benefit.
Yeah.
So people definitely is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
do you have anything, I mean, I know you don't have to mention if there's a person,
Mhm.
but do you have
Okay.
anything in particular that you feel like if you let that thing go, it would leave room for something better, like a habit or like a,
I don't know if this relates. I think it relates somewhat, but I like what you said earlier about listening.
mm,
Um, I'm not sure if I answered your question in a roundabout way, but I think that I could be a better listener
yeah.
for sure. Because I do when you were describing it before, I was like, that's me. Yeah, I'm planning what I'm going to say. It's like it's so selfish. I realize that it's such a selfish thing, but yeah, I think that's my answer to that question
Okay.
in a roundabout way.
I think what I would let go of to leave room for something better. I mean, some of the things that I have well, I won't say 100% let go of is like my need to sort of have things go a certain way, like some
Yeah,
perfectionism.
yeah.
And I feel like with perfectionism, especially in relationships with people, whether it's a romantic relationship, friendship, or a family relationship, it's like needing for something to go a certain way.
Right.
People who are event planners with their family and stuff like that, like bridezilla, it's like,
Yeah. Oh,
you know when we need so much for something to be a certain way, it's like we leave no room for what's possible.
guys, I was in a wedding with someone that was a groomzilla, so you can't just
You
always.
told me about that.
Yeah, you can't just always think about the brides. There are grooms like that too. Unbeknownst to me until very recently, but I digress. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. But that's totally what I'm talking about. Like
Yeah,
that feeling of like having to control everything.
because he couldn't even enjoy his own wedding. He was just
Yeah.
oh man, it was awful.
And it leaves no room for other people, like how other people show up
Yeah,
and what other people can do to,
yeah,
I don't know, like make the situation good or, cause the connection. We're all about connection.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've done that in 2000. In I was not to say 2018, but a couple years ago, just let go of certain toxic individuals that I mean, I love them from a distance, but it has to be from a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think too, because I was talking to a friend of mine, she called me the other day and she was talking about a friend that she wants to actually not just let go of, but actually tell her, like do a friend breakup.
Oh wow.
And then I saw a segment on this. I want to say it was on like the Today Show, like years ago, and it was about like how do you break up with a friend. And I actually don't think that
Wow.
you have to do that with people.
Okay.
Like I feel like if a friendship is not working out, and yeah, there's people who might get a little obsessive and want to call you and all of that stuff. But I feel like if a friend doesn't work for you anymore, it's kind of toxic, is not, showing up in a way that you would want them to, all you really have to do is kind of get in integrity with who you are and what you envision for yourself,
Right.
and not fake it.
Right.
Like, you don't have to give them inauthentic yeses and
No.
spend time with them if you don't want to.
No.
Just go on about your business and the doing of your life,
Yeah.
and they will sort of
They'll
drop
figure
off
their way
on their
out.
own.
They'll figure their way out. They will.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what happened. They figure their way out.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's not cowardly. It's that you don't have to take control. You don't have to like chess piece people in your life. That's something that we feel like I think we have to do, bring people in and put them out. And it's not so
This is
much
why
that.
we're no longer hanging out. Like, it's not even necessary.
Yeah.
It's just like, go about your life.
Exactly.
Be the best you can be.
Up. Yeah, exactly. All right, so we are just about out of time. I'm so glad those quick. Of you, right?
Yeah.
It goes by really fast. Those of you who joined us on Facebook Live, thank you so much. Hopefully you will chat more and have more to say next week. But, I love the likes. I love that you're here. And those of you who are listening in on Armed Radio Global or the Garden or TuneIn app or wherever you are, thank you so much for listening in. We will be back next Monday with more juicy stuff. You think you're coming back, Askia?
If you have me, I'll be back.
We might have Askia back. We don't know.
We'll
we might play a game, do some fun stuff. Until next time, never forget that you are a love machine. If you ever start to feel like you aren't getting the love you need, just make more.
Left your channel.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, everybody on Facebook. Bye. Love.